Intro. Hey friends, welcome to Poor Man's Magic, a place where the wild cards never rain on our parade. Today we are wrapping up our new player tutorial week by taking a look at the final two deck upgrades for the dual land starter decks. These two I'm saving for last because I think they are probably the two weaker decks in the current meta. They're the two weaker decks kind of in any competitive gameplay in general, but that doesn't mean that they aren't worth crafting. Some of them can be really fun, and you can really create some complex play patterns through these two styles. Let's go ahead and take a look at Grave Matters. So the first thing we're going to do, go ahead, make sure that we're setting our format to standard and clicking Not Collected. Let's go ahead and make our cuts before we start adding anything else. So in the one slot, we're going to cut Cult Conscript. We're going to cut Eaten Alive. We're going to cut Urborg Repossession. We're also going to go ahead and cut Doomed Dissenter, Infernal Grasp, Reclusive Taxidermist, Ghoul Caller's Harvest. In the 3 slot, we are going to take out the Gravelighters. We're going to take out Crawling Infestation, Morbid Opportunist, Bloodsworn Squire from the 4-drop, and Dreadhound from the 6. Now this leaves a pretty good core of graveyard recursion and put things in our graveyard type cards. Deathbonnet Sprout at the 1-drop is going to be an excellent start to any game. Getting in with something like an Undead Butler or Tenacious Underdog, which can be recurred with Blitz and also fill a role in your graveyard, is going to be nice. Undead Butler is going to fill your graveyard pretty efficiently, and also allow you to return a creature card that maybe you would want in your hand when Undead Butler dies. You also have some good removal in Tear Asunder. In the 3 slot, Fell Stinger is going to be some nice card draw, and it's going to put itself in the graveyard. Old Rutstein is going to create either treasures or insect tokens or blood tokens, in addition to being a pretty nice blocker with 4 toughness. And then Gloomshrieker is going to be able to get other target permanents back, playing a similar role to Undead Butler. Then lastly is kind of your hard hitter, go wide strategy, do it all card in Consuming Blob. A 3 mana, 2 forest ooze that says Consuming Blob's power is equal to the number of card types among cards in your graveyard, and its toughness is equal to that number plus 1. At the beginning of your end step, and this is at the beginning of all of your end steps, create a green ooze creature token with this creature's power is equal to the number of card types among cards in your graveyard, and its toughness is equal to that number plus 1. Essentially, Consuming Blob makes more Consuming Blobs, and they all grow the more kinds of cards that you put into your graveyard. So this is the core that we're going to build around, so let's go ahead and make a couple of additions. So rather than having removal that's going to cost us life, because again, we are going to slowly ramp up and maybe fall a little behind, so we don't want to give our opponent any unfair advantages there, we're going to play instead 2 copies of Cut Down. We're also going to add 2 more copies of Deathbonnet Sprout. And in the 2 slot, play Go for the Throat. Now this is, I think, still a much better removal option than something like an Infernal Grasp. And having something at instant speed for a low amount of mana is always going to be a good call. We're also going to add another copy of Tenacious Underdog. We're going to keep 3 copies of Undead Butler, add 1 more copy of Shigeki, keep our number of Tear Asunders at 2, and then take a look at the 3-drop. Now the 3-drop pretty much isn't going to go anywhere. We like our Fell Stingers, we like our Gloomshriekers, but we do want 2 more Old Rutsteins, as this really is going to enable a lot of the different payoffs. Next, we are going to want some more Consuming Blobs. When this card comes down, it might be removed, and if you have a backup, that is going to put you ahead in most games. So having as many of these as possible, even up to a full playset of 4, is going to be pretty nice. The downside to crafting something like this, though, is that it is a mythic, and it is pretty much only going to be playable in this and maybe some kinds of mono green. Next, we're going to add another Old Stick Fingers. So Old Stick Fingers is a X-costed 1 black, 1 green horror, which says whenever you cast this spell, reveal cards from the top of your library until you reveal X creature cards. Put all of those creature cards revealed into your graveyard, then put the rest on the bottom of your library in random order. Old Stick Fingers' power and toughness are equal to the number of creature cards in your. Now, as you'll notice, we are playing a lot of creature cards. With Old Stick Fingers, we have 1 4, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 16, 17, 18, 22. 22 different creatures is a lot of creatures, and this can get up to pretty high power even if you're only 8 to 10 turns into a game. Next, we're going to add a couple other nice recursion type cards. The first is going to be another mythic, the form of Phyrexian Fleshgorger. Go ahead and scroll all the way to the end for this guy. There he is. We're going to put in 2 copies of Fleshgorger. Now, the Menace, Lifelink, and Ward are all excellent keywords on a 3-costed creature. Not to mention it comes down as a 3/3, and if it goes to your graveyard and is recurred, can then enter the battlefield as a 7/5. Super powerful card, kind of a must include in most of these kinds of decks. Anything where you're going to bring something back from a graveyard, you should take a look at these prototype artifact creatures, because it's pretty easy to cheat them in for their higher payoff. And in order to cheat them in, we're going to include 2 other cards. The first is Graveyard Shift. This is going to be a sorcery speed spell that has flash as long as there are 5 or more mana values among cards in your graveyard. This is going to happen fairly regularly, and so it's not a bad thing to have at sorcery speed if you're playing maybe an Azorius Control or some other kind of mono white or blue control. And then lastly, rounding out this deck, we are going to include Black Sun's Twilight. Now, Black Sun's Twilight is going to function as 2 things, both removal and recursion. Black Sun's Twilight is an X-costed 1 black instant that says up to 1 target creature gets -X/-X until end of turn, and if X is 5 or more, return a creature card with mana value X or less from your graveyard to the battlefield, tapped. If you wait until the end of your opponent's turn, or at the beginning of combat on their turn, you can remove a big threat, you can bring back one of your nice creatures like a Phyrexian Fleshgorger, and you can have a very effective swing, usually unexpected, usually out of nowhere. This card sees almost no play in the current meta, and I think it could make a name for itself. So these are going to be the cards that we're going with. In the 1 slot, we have Cut Down, we have Deathbonnet Sprout. In the 2 slot, we have Go for the Throat, Tenacious Underdog, Undead Butlers, Shigeki, Tear Asunder. In the 3-drop, Felstinger, Gloomshrieker, and Old Rutstein. In the 5 drops, Graveyard Shift and Consuming Blob, Phyrexian Fleshgorger in a 3 or 7 slot, Old Stick Fingers in a X+2 slot, and then finally Black Sun's Twilight. Now, as with most of our other decks, we are going to want to play some of the rare lands, dual-colored lands. This could be Deathcap Glade, it could be Llanowar Wastes. The whole idea is that we do want to play on turn 1, 2, and 3 whatever card or whatever play we have available to us, and we aren't going to want our mana tripping us up. We will go ahead and cut out some of those tap lands, and that's where we're going to leave it. Our upgrade for Grave matters. Next, we'll take a look at Blossoming Growth. So Blossoming Growth is, I think, the weakest of all the starter decks. It tends to have some pretty random play patterns. It's not very fast, it doesn't put down a whole lot of defenders, and if you don't hit your ramp perfectly, you're not going to be able to take advantage of drawing into some of your payoff cards like a Titan of Industry or a Hullbreaker Horror. So before we start making any changes, let's go ahead and once again change the format to standard, click not collected. So what are we going to cut? Several things, unsurprisingly. Modern Age, I think, is okay, but not quite what we're going to want here. Triskaidekaphile, a very difficult thing to pull off, and I don't think this is the right build around. Zeus's Many Journeys we are going to keep in. Master's Rebuke, I don't like this kind of removal in this particular deck. You really have to get to one of your Sludge Monsters or Colossal Sky Turtles or Titan of Industries in order for this to pay off, and often be a dead card in your hand for 4 to 8 turns. Next, in the 3 slot, we are going to take out the Careful Cultivations. We are going to leave in the Jewel Thief, and we're actually going to add 1 Croaking Counterpart. You'll see why shortly. Case the Joint at 4 mana, not doing nearly enough for the amount of cost. Organ Hoarder, not quite the right thing to include, and actually, if you do want to make a Sultai copy of the Graveyard Matters. Organ Hoarder is a really nice inclusion in that one. Boseiju Reaches Skyward, a little too many at 3, so we're just going to cut 1 copy of that. And into the 5-drop, we're going to cut the Psychic Pickpocket. We're going to cut the Blossom Prancer, and there's really no need for Glorious Sunrise. And in the 6+, we're going to cut out the Cleanup Cruise. We're going to keep a Hullbreaker Horror. We're going to keep the Titan of Industry, and we are going to keep the Colossal Sky Turtles. So what gets added? Well, in any kind of ramp deck, it's my belief that in addition to putting down lands, you need to be answering at least 1 or 2 of your opponent's threats before turn 4 and 5. And that means that we are going to play some Fading Hopes. I always like playing a full playset of these. I think having 1, 2, 3 in any game is pretty effective and means you can buy yourself enough time to draw into whatever it is that you might need in terms of your best cards. We're also going to play some other tempo cards that are going to be popular in any kind of mono blue deck, things like Make Disappear, another full playset. So these cards are really going to let us get through the first 4 or 5 turns without taking too much damage and allow us to set ourselves up for success in the late game. In addition to these 2 controlling cards, we are going to play a little bit of threat in Suspicious Stowaway, 2 copies, and in the 3-drop, add some good mono blue card draw in Thirst for Discovery. 3 copies of that as well. So we have in our 3-slot, Thirst for Discovery, Jewel Thief, Croaking Counterpart, and now, for one of the better ramp spells available to us in Standard, Topiary Stomper. Now, I don't think you need more than 2 or 3 copies of this. I think you're going to have plenty of other creatures, plenty of other things to be doing with your time and with your mana. I think having 2 copies is nice. That way, you don't feel as bad if you draw multiples of them in the early game, because you know you won't be drawing them in the late game. And if you only get to them in the late game, that's okay. You had plenty of other things to do in rounds 1 through 5. Now, we're going to keep Boseiju Reaches Skyward as our only 2 4-drops in this deck and go straight to some bigger payoff cards. Remember, we're trying to ramp with Azusa, we're trying to ramp with Jewel Thief, Topiary Stomper, and Boseiju, so we really want to get to our bigger payoff cards by turn 5 or 6. And that means not having a lot of turn 4 plays. So instead, because we're playing so many kind of controlling instants and sorceries, I think having a one-off copy of Lear, Disciple of the Drowned, is a very sneaky good inclusion. I do like Sludge Monster. I think it doesn't see a lot of play, and if it does, and if it comes down and sticks around, and if you can maybe copy it with some Croaking Counterparts, it can be pretty gnarly. We're also going to buff up some of our bigger payoff cards. I think 1 Hullbreaker Horror is okay if you want to play 2, that's totally fine. I think Titan of Industry is going to be the best possible payoff card you can have, and another Colossal Sky Turtle won't hurt either. So we'll go ahead and add 3 Titans of Industry, 3 Colossal Sky Turtles, and 1 more Hullbreaker Horror, and this is going to be the upgraded version of Blossoming Growth. We're going to be able to stall early with Fading Hopes, with some Make Disappears, we're going to be able to ramp, we're going to be able to get down some really nice non-legendary creatures that do things like Topiary Stomper, Jewel Thief, get us to that 4, 5, 6 mana level, and then hopefully capitalize by playing some of our big bombs, Hullbreaker Horror, Titan of Industry, Colossal Sky Turtle. If we're lucky, maybe we get to play a bomb and then Croaking Counterpart, creating lots of very effective frog copies of these powerful effects. As with our other deck, we'll go ahead and also play a few more of the rare dual lands, some Dreamroot Cascades, some Yavimaya Coasts, but it is important to also keep plenty of basics since we'll be searching those up with several different effects. We'll go ahead, we'll cut out all of the duals except for 5 copies, and then we'll add back 2 additional copies of each basic land. And this is going to be the upgrade for Blossoming Growth. In the 1 mana slot, Fading Hope. In the 2 mana slot, Make Disappear, Suspicious Stowaway, and Azusa's Many Journeys. In the 3 slot, Thirst for Discovery, Jewel Thief, Topiary Stomper, and Croaking Counterpart. Boseiju Reaches Skyward in the 4 slot, Lear, Disciple of the Drowned, and Sludge Monster in the 5. and Hullbreaker Horror, Titan of Industry, and Colossal Sky Turtle to close out our top end. And with that, we've gotten to the end of our starter deck upgrade series. I hope you learned something helpful. I hope you got some good ideas for building and crafting your own variety of upgrades to these decks. If you found this video helpful, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe, as it really does help my small channel grow. And I will see you in the next one.